Hello. Today I came to the studio to share my experience working as a private nanny here in the U.S. I want to talk about what this job actually looks like from the inside, honestly, calmly, without dramatizing. This is the kind of work parents often hear about, but they don't always know what really happens behind the scenes. And I want to share my stories, my observations, and the conclusions I've come to after several years in this field. It all started pretty simply. When I was finishing my studies at a university, I wanted to find a side job, something that wouldn't conflict with my classes, but would give me a sense of independence. I looked into different options, tutoring, part-time retail shifts, even thought about doing promotional work. And completely by chance, I came across an ad from a nanny matching service. I filled out their profile, passed a short interview, and almost immediately was connected with a family. That's how I started working with my first little ones. And surprisingly, I stayed with that family for almost a year, maybe 10 months or even a bit longer. After that, word of mouth took over. We had this nanny, responsible, reliable. And suddenly other parents started reaching out to me. Over time, it became not just a side gig, but truly a profession where you temporarily become part of someone else's household. If we talk about what a private nanny actually does, many people imagine some sort of all-in-one house manager who's supposed to cook for everyone, clean the home, teach the alphabet, and wash the dishes at night. But in reality, nanny duties are always a matter of clear agreement. There's a basic set of responsibilities: keeping the child safe, organizing activities, outdoor time, hygiene routines, helping with meals. Sometimes I would warm up or prepare simple food for the child, but it all depends on what the nanny is willing to take on and what exactly the parents want. In every family I worked with, there was always a trial day. Sometimes it was an hour, sometimes two. Parents might stay nearby or step out briefly, but they always observe, directly or indirectly, and I totally understood that. They need to see how their child reacts to a new adult, whether they reach out, whether they feel scared, whether they're open to contact. They need to see how the nanny handles stress, like when the little one suddenly bursts into tears. And here's a strange thing. Online, you can find all sorts of horror stories about nannies allegedly giving kids alcohol or medication to make them sleep. When I first read that, I felt sick. For me, even the idea is completely unacceptable on a moral and human level. It's not just unprofessional, it's criminal. But the internet loves sensational stories, and even if something like that happens once somewhere, it gets blown up to the size of a national scandal. There's also something nannies worry about, even though people rarely talk about it openly. Sometimes fathers in the household may behave inappropriately. I've heard such stories from colleagues. Personally, I never experienced anything serious, but I always preferred to dress modestly and neutrally, just to avoid unnecessary awkwardness. Although honestly, I believe that if a woman comes into a family to work with children, she will work with children. And if someone comes with a different intention, well, then clothing has nothing to do with it. One of the families I worked with had cameras. Not hidden cameras, but clearly visible ones. I saw the cameras, and the cameras saw me, and honestly, I was completely fine with that. If I have nothing to hide, then being recorded isn't a problem. Parents have every right to check what's happening in their own home. Plus, as far as I know, hidden surveillance is at least unethical and in many cases illegal. So I always say, if you want cameras, install them. Just tell the nanny. Another topic is theft. Theft can happen in any profession, whether someone is a nanny, a doctor, or a lawyer. If a person has that attitude inside, I'll take what isn't mine. It won't matter what job they hold. That's why, again, it's not about diplomas or certificates. It's about the personality you're hiring, about their values. When I worked through a nanny matching service, they asked, "How much do you want to be paid?" I would name a rate, say $20 an hour. The service added their commission, maybe $3 or $4 per hour, and parents paid that higher rate. Payments were usually handed directly. No paperwork, no taxes. Sometimes it came out to maybe $2,000 or $2,500 a month for part-time hours. And honestly, compared to preschool teachers who handle 15, 20 kids at once for similar money, it felt like a relatively easy income. I still believe preschool teachers in this country are incredibly undervalued. Of course, being a nanny is easier when you're young. You have more energy, more flexibility, and you don't come in with that "I know everything about raising kids" attitude. Young nannies usually don't try to lecture moms or fix the family's routines. They just help. And honestly, that's a huge advantage for any household. Sometimes parents ask, where does a nanny's work in a family actually begin? And the answer is really simple. It begins with accepting that the family already has its own system. They already have their rhythms, their routines, their habits, their ways of feeding and putting the child to sleep, even their own method of bundling the kid up for outside. And you don't come in with your own rules. You adapt to theirs. You're like a puzzle piece that needs to fit. And if you don't fit, everyone feels it right away. As for benefits, well, private nannies don't have them. This isn't an office job with HR policies and paid time off. There are no paid sick days, no paid vacation, no holiday bonuses. The closest thing to a benefit package in a private household is when the parents say, feel free to grab something from the fridge if you're hungry. And even that varies from family to family. Sometimes it's totally open. Sometimes everything is strictly for the household. And that's completely okay, because at the end of the day, you're still a guest in someone's home, even if you work there every day. The hardest part is the schedule. It's almost always irregular. You might get a text saying, we're heading out of town for a few days, we'll call you when we're back. And just like that, you're temporarily out of work. So private nannies need backup families, multiple clients, and the ability not to rely on just one household. It's not a stable job, it's a flexible one. Of course, there were stressful moments. The most frightening ones were situations involving injuries. Over the years, I had 2 cases like that. One in particular I remember clearly. The child slipped on a patch of ice at the playground and hit his nose on the wooden edge of the sandbox. Immediately, screaming, crying, panic. I calmed him down, checked him, saw the swelling start, wiped away the sand, used some antiseptic spray, picked him up, and rushed home. Then I called the parents right away and explained everything. The next day, we met on purpose to talk through the situation calmly. I've always believed in total transparency. You can't hide things like that. But when the parents took the child to urgent care, the doctor didn't believe the story. They suspected he had fallen from a height. And I remember how anxious I felt, because with kids, nasal injuries can affect how the nose develops later. Deviated septum, breathing issues, all kinds of things. We watched him closely for a few days, and thank goodness, everything turned out fine. But that situation taught me how important honest communication is between parents and a nanny. Now, the most important thing I want to say to families who are looking for a private nanny. Focus on personality, not just credentials. Experience is important. References are important. But if your gut doesn't feel comfortable with someone, even if they seem highly qualified, nothing good will come of it. A nanny spends hours, sometimes days, with your child. This needs to be a person with empathy, with emotional balance, with genuine respect for your home. Clearly define responsibilities from the beginning. A common mistake parents make is saying, just watch the baby, and later adding, actually, could you also clean the floors? And maybe cook dinner? And maybe handle laundry? This puts the nanny in an awkward position. By then, she's already part of the household dynamic, and it's hard to say no. So if you want combined duties, say it up front. Be very specific. Don't just look for a nice nanny. Look for a nanny experienced with infants, a nanny comfortable with early development activities, a nanny willing to prepare kid-friendly meals, a nanny who works without being glued to a phone. The clearer the portrait you create, the faster you'll find the right person. Don't get personal when conflicts arise. Even when mistakes happen, and they will, we're all human. You can discuss it, work through it, solve it. Personal insults won't help anybody, especially in a job that requires emotional steadiness. And when it comes to children, emotional control is everything. People often ask me, do you actually love your job? Yes, truly. If I didn't love kids, I would have never gone into this field. Being a private nanny isn't just a temporary gig. It's a profession built on trust, responsibility, and sincerity. You become part of a little person's world, and that's incredibly meaningful. And if even one parent listening to this becomes more thoughtful and intentional in choosing a nanny, then sharing my experience was absolutely worth it.